Welcome back. It's Puck Sports. It's a Tuesday. It's time for our visit with the great, the one and only, who has changed his backdrop on the video. He wants everyone to think how smart he is. Ladies and gentlemen, it's the John Canzano Show. It's brought to you by Zeke's Pizza, Zeke'sPizza.com, for the very best local Northwest craft beers, the best pizza around. Visit Zeke'sPizza.com. John Canzano, of course, the bald-faced truth down there in Portland, Oregon. The fabulous writing up at JohnCanzano.com. You can follow him on X at John Canzano BFT. We record with him. Episodes drop every Tuesday here at PuckSports.com. And, of course, wherever you find this fabulous show, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you find your podcasts. All right. Well, what's with the new background? You trying to make us feel stupid here with all the books that you claim that you've read?
You have books that you've read. These are books that I have read and haven't read. Some of these books don't belong to me. They're my wife's books. So, you know what I do have that I'm blocking, though, that's kind of cool? Can you see this Pac-12 banner behind me?
Yeah, a little bit? I see it a little bit. Yeah, okay. I see the Pac-12 banner. Yeah, it's good.
So I picked that up at the Pac-12 baseball tournament, the last event of the Pac-12. It was on the clearance rack. It's got all 12 Pac-12 original teams. I got it for $5. I think that's a collector's item. I think I'm going to hang on to that.
Well, how much do you think that will be worth in a few years? Like $2 or
It'll
what?
be like those Wheaties boxes with the Dream Team on them that you see at garage sales now. It'll be worth $5.99.
Yeah,
you know,
Wheaties, the worst cereal ever. Just terrible. Why did anyone think it was great marketing, but bad cereal?
Yeah, but they had a generation convinced that if you ate Wheaties, you too could be like Bruce Jenner. Yeah. And now, not so much. I don't know.
That's a different show.
Was anybody more disappointed by all that than Wheaties? You know?
Yeah, probably. Well, the famous cover that I just, for some reason, it's always Mary Lou.
Yeah.
I just always think, when I think Wheaties, boxes, covers, I think of her.
And I think of Mary Lou. I think of Jordan. Jordan was on there a number of times.
Yeah, sure.
And then kind of the dream team in Barcelona. Yeah. Since we're on this Olympic thing, you know, are you exhausted by the Olympics, or is this?
Not exhausted by it. Yeah. I find it hard to keep up with all of it, and I do watch a fair amount. But then I'll hear people talking about, oh, did you see this? Did you see that? I'm like, no, I didn't see that. I go, maybe I'm not plugged into it so much in the morning, and then at night when a lot of other people are probably watching it, I'm watching baseball. I'm watching the Mariners play.
It's hard too when you know the outcome, and we all now, unless you're completely unplugged or coming out of a coma, you're going to know Simone Biles. This is what happened, and you had to see this cycling, race that was phenomenal finish, but there's a lot of the drama that gets sucked out of it with the time difference. So and I find myself watching highlights, and I gotta be honest with you, like I rather would settle in and watch the whole event because you get sucked into kind of a match and a gold medal match. But the highlights on Peacock, where they condense everything to like 90 seconds, it just it's moving too fast for me. I don't have a dog in the fight.
I mean, I like what they've done. I think Peacock's done a really nice job with some of the stuff. We watch a lot of the gymnastics, the highlights and things and all that because of my daughter and that. But it's I like what they've done with it. It's good. And if you want to get caught up on it really fast, well, I guess here's my thing. I find extremely frustrating. I think about it. It's like I wanted to find out when the basketball team played today. Yeah. Finding that schedule
100%
is impossible. I went to ESPN.com. They don't really have it. They don't even have box scores, for crying out loud. And then it takes you to the Olympic website. And even on the Olympic website, you're scrolling can I just find when is the game?
The old days, man. Do you remember the old days of having to be make an appointment and be there? But we have, after dinner, we generally settle in and we kind of watch whatever is happening. And yesterday it was badminton. It was great. Shooting. Badminton, things you never thought you'd be an expert on.
Did you see the guy? He was from Turkey or something. the shooter, and he was like, everybody was in like all their Olympic outfits, and this guy was like in a t-shirt and blue jeans.
He looked like he was hanging out at the park, trailer park. He was just awesome. Shooting at beer cans.
Yeah, that's what I want. I want
kind of a flex if you think about it. I mean, you know, he didn't have all the fancy equipment. He just got off the bus and started shooting.
You know, I think this is a good transition, because I think one thing that I think in this new age of media, and it's, you know, college football is into it as well. And I know you've got some news here on CW and streaming is such a huge part of how we devour everything now. I think I'll be honest with you, I miss the old days in a weird way of sports sometimes, when I knew when I watched the Olympics, it was going to be on whatever my NBC affiliate was, and it started at 6:00, and then it just went to 10, and then that was it. It wasn't all over the place on USA Network, on this platform, on Peacock, and on 15 different channels, right? And the good of that is you can watch everything live now, and you don't miss out anything. Yeah. But it's so all over the place. It's kind of like college football. Like when I was growing up, it was not every game was on TV, but I knew at 12:30 this game started, and that game started. It's on this network and it's on that network, and I know there was a little bit more of a routine to it. I'm not saying that I would trade it, because back in the day you didn't get to have every game on TV, and it's better to have every game on TV. But there is something a little lost in that, just the familiarity or the routine.
I've covered 5 Olympics in person, and that's how it feels when you're there, because they'll post the schedule of the day. You'll wake up, you'll look at what's going on, and you'll be like, okay, Rulon Gardner's wrestling, and then you look and you go, okay, there's a fencer that's from your area who's fencing, and then Team USA is playing a basketball game, and Michael Phelps is swimming, and 2 days from now Usain Bolt is running, and it does have this really scattered feel to it when you're there. And I think traditionally what we grew up on, Puck, was we grew up on NBC, and Bob Costas sort of welcome you to the Olympics, and then they're sitting by the fireplace at the end of the night, kind of summarizing what happened that day and what's going to happen tomorrow. But it when you're there, it does feel scattered like that. And you do have to make some hard decisions about what you're going to watch, because you can't be everywhere. And so you miss something, by not being in one place.
Yeah. A buddy of mine who's on the show, Chris Egan of King 5, he's back there, and he's been back there, and he's just running around.
Right.
He's crazy. Just all over the place. And he's trying to cover all of these, athletes that are connected to the state. And he's just like, it's impossible to get them all.
I was at fencing, and I was watching a kid from Beaverton who won a gold medal. And then I got a call saying, you need to get to basketball. Team USA was playing Puerto Rico in Athens. And you need to get to basketball. Team USA is behind early. And, so I go over to basketball expecting that Team USA is going to catch back up. They're down at half. They lose the game. It became a big story, but you have to almost have somebody somewhere else, like I'm sure Egan does back in Seattle, having somebody tell him, hey, you need to be here, or, hey, heads up, somebody from our region just made the final, and it is a surprise.
Yeah. All right. Well, what's going on with CW? I think it was either last week or 2 weeks ago. I asked you, hey, is there going to be a streaming element to the CW network? I think you've got my answer. What is it?
Yeah. No, there will be no streaming element on the CW. No live stream of the Oregon State and Washington State football games. The CW is available in 100% of households, and their thinking is that they want you to tune in using either your television and an antenna, or they want you to tune in using your cable package. I put a locator of the CW channels, and I put it in my mailbag on Monday. So people want to check that out, they can. I'll also tweet it. Puck, I'll send it to you. You can tweet it as well, but it'll help people kind of find where they can see the games. And what becomes evident is, look, even if you're somebody who streams, if you do Hulu or you do Fubo or whatever that is, and if you do one of those streaming platforms, you can get the CW on it. So the CW sees the streaming element as redundant. So they're going, look, if you're a streamer anyway, you can find it. They will put the games a day later available to be streamed on their platform and their app. But there will be no live stream of the games themselves. And I think the Pac-12 is really comfortable with that, because what do they want? They want people to tune into the CW. They want the CW to get that ratings credit, ring the bell. CW wants the ratings for it. So there's a whole bunch of activity there, but no live stream. I'm told the CW does not have the rights to stream that. The Pac-12 did not sell them the rights to stream that. And the Pac-12 is saying, they're not going to come in and cannibalize what would be the audience for the CW. So they're just telling people, don't wait until Saturday morning when Oregon State or Washington State are kicking off to go try to look for it. Get to that CW locator, put in your zip code. And I did it yesterday. It gave me like 12 options of where I can find the game. Okay. And quite a few of them don't cost you anything. Just turn on your TV. And by the way, it's one of those channels you get with a basic cable package. So I don't think it's a big deal. And for those of you who really need to have it on your phone, there are a variety of streaming apps that carry the CW at no charge. So take a look at those as well in that locator.
Do you know, I'll take a look. Do you know Fubo has it and then YouTube TV has it?
YouTube TV, Hulu, and a few others. And so, I was really surprised at how many ways there were to get the CW. And they're not kidding. Like they say 100%. Now, I did find one guy who lives in Idaho who said, hey, I can't get it because I live in a town where the mountains are so high that the signal goes right over us. I really do need to stream it. I even looked into him and found, hey, he can subscribe to Hulu or YouTube TV or one of those things, and he can get it as well. So I think it's kind of, for people who are belly aching about it, like, go watch your team. If you're motivated to watch your team, you can find the CW. And then, for people who are into this, Puck, like, I had reported the other day that there was a little change of how they were going to, broadcast the games. Remember the broadcast teams came out?
Yeah.
See if I'm okay to say this right now. But, Chase Daniel was supposed to be an analyst for the Washington State and Oregon State games. He's off the broadcast now. So I'm told the CW is looking into a number of other people. Huh. I think the person they should put in the booth is Ryan Leaf. Like I would put him in a heartbeat. I think he is the right guy to be on these games. But let's see how smart the CW is.
Well, the connection is natural, right?
Yeah.
It was a quarterback in the conference, can speak to both of those programs, can speak to the future of it. He's very good at it. Yeah, I think it's I think for Oregon State fans and Washington State fans, it's clearly a more familiar face than Chase Daniel. I bet there's a lot of people who would have no idea who Chase Daniel is.
Yeah, and then
or was what happened? Do we know what happened with Chase Daniel?
No, I don't know, because he was even telling people like 2 weeks ago that he was excited to do the games, and so I don't know if there was some breakdown contractually with Chase Daniel. Or did he get a better offer, or did he decide that's not where he wanted to be? But, the two people that immediately came to mind for me were Ryan Leaf and Nick Aliotti. And I thought, well, is Aliotti too much of a duck? Like, if you put him on those games, are the Washington State and Oregon State fans going to go, oh, So I kind of think that Ryan Leaf's the no-brainer. If the CW is smart, you put him on those games, and I think he'd want to do them.
Let me ask you this. Do we know 100% certainty, will they be at the stadiums? Or will they call these games remotely?
I didn't ask that. I'll find that out. But my inclination is that they're going to be in the booth. And the CW has not been doing remote broadcasts. And the Pac-12 is going to they're going to engineer those games. Let me see if I can get an answer for that right while we're on the broadcast. How about that?
That'd be wonderful.
How about some real? Let me just send a text message to somebody at the CW who could answer that for me.
This is when we need the elevator music. Little dentist office.
Will the CW crews be in stadium? Is that what we're asking?
Yeah, I want to know if they're going to be there. Or they're going to be calling it off a monitor.
Like those Fox guys who were hanging out in L.A.
Yeah. It's hard, and I get the strategy of it. I understand it, but it's I always feel, and you feel the same way. It's always better when you're there, when you're in person.
Just making sure they're not going to be remote. Yeah. But the Pac-12. Look, I think the Pac-12 wants to do a really nice job broadcasting these games. The CW crews last year for the ACC games were on site.
Okay.
I'll get the answer during this broadcast. How about that?
Right. You're damn right. Well, if you don't, we'll be looking elsewhere.
We'll just keep going. This could be like Jerry Lewis, and we'll raise some money.
Somebody get Wilner on the line. No. Where I was going to go with the CW, and I lost my train of thought on the remote broadcast. Oh, I know what I was going to ask you. So speaking of the CW, ACC, Pac-12,
Yeah.
Is because they're going to be on that network. What's the probability or the of them joining force? Let's say Florida State and Clemson, something happens there.
Right.
Do we see some type? We hear about the Big 12. I'm going to ask you about the Big 12 in a second.
Sure.
But do we see anything with like the Pac-2 and the ACC like coming together?
Well, look, I mean, I think there's a number of things going on there. One, let's just talk about the CW deal with the Pac-12. This is a 1-year deal. It's 11 football games. The other 2 are on Fox. So this season, you're going to see Oregon State, Washington State play on the CW. You're going to see them play, the Texas Tech, Washington State games on Fox or FS1, and the Civil War is on Fox or FS1. And then the other games will be part of the Mountain West Conference TV package. So you'll see those games wherever you would see a Mountain West game. But moving forward beyond this, everything's on the table because if there is an implosion in the ACC, let's deal with that one first because that's the most likely bit of chaos that could happen. There's an implosion, let's say at the end of this season in the ACC, and Florida State and Clemson negotiate their way out. The people I've talked with in the TV world say that the ACC and the ACC network would continue to be valuable. Like ESPN's not going to turn their back on that and go, okay, we're walking away just because those 2 schools are out. They also have added the Bay Area schools, and they've added, a school in Texas and SMU. But I think they would want at that point to add even more value. And I think the ACC at that point would look west and look at new TV windows in the Pacific time zone and go, okay, could you add Washington State? Could you add Oregon State? And how about San Diego State just to round it out and give SMU a partner there? So I think you could see a scenario where the ACC implodes and the Pac-12 or Pac-2 benefits from that chaos. And then you could see the CW and ESPN come in together with the ACC and go, okay, if ESPN's not willing to do like a pro rata deal and just add Oregon State, Washington State, what's the CW's role here? And do they become a bigger partner for the ACC moving forward? Because, they don't have all the ACC games. They kind of got like the 3rd tier ACC games last year. So could they get better games? Could they partner together? I think that would absolutely be on the table.
All right. Well, where we stand with the Big 12? I mean, there just seems to be so much the internet, Twitter, rumorville surrounding the Big 12, Oregon State, and Washington State. Well, what's the latest? Clear it up for us, Canzano. What do you know? What's the truth?
Yeah, a lot of smoke out there, and absolutely everybody's talking. I mean, the report last Friday, from Wilner talking about the Pac-12's in contact with the ACC, in contact with the Big 12, having broad discussions, not discussions about those 2 schools joining the Big 12 imminently. But there's a lot of smoke out there, a lot of speculation. I don't blame people from speculating, but I immediately checked on that stuff and was told by sources at Oregon State and sources at Washington State that there was nothing to the notion that there was a discussion with the Big 12 about joining. They have closed that door for now. Brett Yormark, I think, is really starting to look at what's he going to do with private equity? What happens if there's chaos in the ACC? Sure. I also think he might circle back and be interested in Washington State, Oregon State, or San Diego State. I was told I was hanging around at Big Ten Media Day, and I was told by an athletic director in the Big Ten who said, hey, I said, what's going to happen with the Pac-12? What's going to happen with the Group of 5? And they said, look, there are a very limited number of schools in the Group of 5 that add value. It's Washington State, it's Oregon State, it's San Diego State, it's Memphis, it's University of Texas, San Antonio. Maybe you start to talk about UNLV, maybe there's a smaller school in Florida. Maybe there, you could get into Florida a little bit, but the Group of 5 schools that actually bring value and wouldn't have to be subsidized could also just join forces and go, look, we're going to be the best G5 conference in America, negotiate the best TV deal, and guess what? Our conference champion's going to the playoff every year. That could happen as well, because I think that some of the Group of 5 schools are tired of subsidizing the ones that don't bring value. And I'm talking about Hawaii doesn't bring value, Wyoming, New Mexico, Utah State. There's just a number that, even in the Mountain West, they're being subsidized. Hawaii's being subsidized by the other schools in the Mountain West in the same way that probably people could argue that Oregon State and Washington State were being subsidized by USC and UCLA. So that same kind of consolidation could happen in the G5. Brett Yormark in the Big 12 could come in and say, hey, we think there's strength in numbers. The ACC and the Big 12 could combine, which I thought they should have done when the CFP revenues were distributed. I thought they had real strength and an opportunity to have some leverage if they had just joined forces and said, hey, we're partners. There's also, Puck, a scenario where, like, let's just say the Big 12 and the ACC and, the Pac-12 get together and go, look, we don't need to do any kind of merging. Nobody needs to realign, but let's create like a three-headed monster that creates a check and balance for the SEC and the Big Ten. Let's play each other and not play them until we get to the playoff.
I mean, I think everything is on the board of what they want to do with the future of college football specifically. All right, clear something up for me with the new playoff format.
Yeah, I got an answer on the stream. On the broadcast. I am told all CW broadcasters will be on site. The production teams will be in the Pac-12 Enterprises facility in San Ramon, but all the broadcast teams will be on site at the stadium.
There we go. I'll find out what Chase Daniel did. What did they find in his social media past?
Why do you assume he did something?
It just doesn't. He just immediately is off.
You think he got pulled off?
No.
I think he begged out. I think he kind of looked around and went,
you know what? Train wreck.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
But get somebody who wants to be there. Call Ryan Leaf today.
That's good for me. I think anybody with the knowledge. I mean, the Chase Daniel thing never made sense to me anyways because there's no association with the West Coast.
Yeah.
But,
right.
Get some.
Yeah, and I think for Pac-12 fans, for Oregon State, Washington State fans, you're going to watch a broadcast that is being produced by the Pac-12 Enterprises. The studio show is going to have Mike Yam, former Pac-12 network guy, as the face of it. You're going to see some familiar faces across now. Let's get some analyst work in there. Guy Haberman, he's over on the Big Ten Network. Ashley Adamson's on the Big Ten Network. Yogi Roth has gone to the Big Ten Network. I just think it would be nice for Oregon State, Washington State fans to have people who know them on those broadcasts.
What is so here's my clarification question for you. Does Oregon State, can Oregon State, Washington State get an automatic berth into this playoff?
If they're the highest ranked school that is not in a Power 4 conference, they get that G5 berth.
They get that G5 berth.
So, Oregon, they would get that berth. So what's
they're
your
not
competition?
operating.
Let's just say Washington
I didn't mean to jump in. So they're not operating as it's the Pac-2 for 1 year, and whoever's the highest record wins, right? Okay, that's why I want to clarify that because somebody asked me that, and I was like, no. I just wanted to get clarification on that one. So the highest ranked.
And I'm told they will not crown a conference champion. And Washington State wins that Oregon State game. They're not going to be a conference champion. But here's the thing: like Washington State, I think is the team that has the best shot between those two schools right now. I just think they have more coming back. Really love their freshman running back. He's a dynamic player. Offensive line is more physical than it's been. You look at the schedule, there's some tough games. You go to Boise, you go to Fresno. Those are hard places to play. Fresno, they're going to throw batteries and screwdrivers at you during the game and make your life hell. Boise's a tough place to win. But, if Washington State can win those games, they'll be in the driver's seat. And it'll be Washington State, UNLV, Boise State. It'll be those kinds of schools really competing, and maybe the best from the American, competing for that G5 berth. And, what would be a really nice payout for whoever makes it there. So, I think it's really interesting to kind of debate, like, is it possible Washington State could get to that playoff before Washington? Absolutely. I think they're in better position this year to get to the playoff than Washington is. So I think the only thing you have to worry about is a little bit of perception, because I think, outsiders and maybe the people who do the rankings and the polls and the CFP committee, I haven't talked to any of them about this, but I kind of just wonder, will the perception be, hey, Washington State and Oregon State have way more funding than these G5 schools. They had a huge running head start, especially Washington State's case because they didn't change coaches. Will they be downgraded a little bit in the rankings because of that? Will the voters want to give Boise State or want to give Memphis the leg up? That remains to be seen. But right now, if I'm Washington State, I'm feeling okay about, your shot of, you got a puncher's chance to get in this playoff.
I'm trying to think so they got 12. What do they have to go? 10-2?
Probably that. And I think, the thing is if Boise State is like the Mountain West's best team or UNLV is the best team, who knows? But, Oregon State plays UNLV, and Washington State plays both Boise State and Fresno State on the road. Those are huge games. You got to win those games, and you got to just kind of show, hey, we're better than these normal group of 5 schools. And that's kind of what the brand needs too, right? If you're talking about marketing and branding and you're Washington State and Oregon State, you kind of need to tell the world, hey, we don't belong here.
Right.
And so I think on a week in, week out basis, San Diego State, Boise State, Fresno State, great opportunity for both Oregon State and Washington State to prove that, they are better than these other schools. And it's no knock on them. Nobody should get hurt feelings over this. Just they have bigger budgets than these schools have. When you look at, you compare their athletic department budgets, Washington State and Oregon State for the first time, maybe in their history, will be competing as a have on the level that they're on.
It's dangerous though, because those teams, San Jose State, I'm just looking at Wazoo's schedule. Boise State and Fresno State, they're looking at those teams going, we were overlooked by you, right? We're a bunch of 2-star kids, and we're going to come kick your ass. And we're going to dominate you. I mean, it wasn't too long ago it was 2 years ago when Wazoo played Fresno State in a bowl game, and Fresno State obliterated them. I mean, and if you didn't,
and Utah State beat Oregon State, not that long ago in LA
Bowl. If you didn't know which team was in which conference, I remember watching that Fresno State game, that bowl game, going, that's the more physical team. That was the last year of Jake Haener, and they bludgeoned them. So I'd be, if I was Dickert and Bray and those guys, I'd be real leery of my teams not thinking, to your point, like we're one of the haves now. We're going to come in here and we're going to dominate.
No, you can't think that way. Look, I covered Fresno State for a couple of years, and the mentality of those Fresno State kids, you're absolutely right. They were Bay Area and LA, Central Valley kids who had been overlooked by UCLA and USC, overlooked by Stanford and Cal, and in some cases couldn't get into Stanford and Cal, and they showed up wanting to kick those schools' ass. Like when Fresno State played USC, they went down and beat them in a Holiday Bowl. Like that's a Super Bowl. But I don't think Washington State and Oregon State quite have that perception in the minds of the Fresno State and San Diego State and UNLV and Boise kids, because I think those kids are more looking at the teams that went off to the Big Ten, and they're more looking at, wherever they were recruited, what school in their backyard didn't recruit them. So you're right. I mean, you have to show up to play, and neither Washington State or Oregon State is good enough just to roll the ball out and win those games. But I really like Wayshawn Parker in that backfield for Washington State. He can fly. He's a 3-star kid. He has a chip on his shoulder. And, he was, I think Jake Dickert is sitting on a team that could be really explosive and dangerous. If they get good quarterback play, they're going to be all right.
I'd love to, next time I talk to Dickert, I'm going to ask him this, that I don't know how many coaches have ever started their coaching career, their head coaching career in the situations that he has. When you think about everything that he's had to go through in his time as the head coach there, he takes over for Rolovich amid that whole chaos and how chaotic that was, right? A guy gets fired because he wanted to, doesn't want to adhere to the mandates. And then, so he does that. Then it's COVID. So he's got to navigate that whole season of dealing with COVID and the restrictions and the portal now being so big. And then now he's got to deal with them being left out of these big conferences and they don't have a home. I'd like to know another head coach that has started their coaching career under more rocky road situation than this guy.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of situations that you could even compare to the Rolovich, transition to Dickert.
Not many.
And what just happened, it's unprecedented, and he's been there for both of them. And to his credit, he retains that roster. I think, we always talk about this in our house. We talk about youth sports, and we love to see our kids succeed. But you know what? What's better than seeing your kids succeed is watching your kids struggle a little bit and break through on their own. There's a feel about that. There's a little metal that comes from facing that kind of adversity or turmoil and pounding through it. And in some ways, you might argue that the transition after Rolovich has prepared Jake Dickert for what he's about to do this season. Like, he's been through it. He's like, okay, we survived that. We came out of that okay. We played well after that. and now he's facing, some turmoil. Just imagine when Washington State eventually gets its feet underneath it. But we'll see what happens. I think this is, for Oregon State, Washington State. Oregon State's got to be bowl eligible. I think they need to get to 6, but Washington State, I think, has a real chance to compete for that CFP berth.
I want to talk Washington and Oregon here real quickly. Dan Lanning, you talked about, I think, in your mailbag about how, and then I listened to the clip when I think it was on your show about how he talked about, hey, I don't want to get caught watching someone else's ice cream melt, or you're watching somebody else eat their ice cream while yours melts. He's a great talker. Sounds like he's a great recruiter. I think the jury's out whether or not he's a great football coach. I don't know how many signature wins he has yet. He's yet to beat Washington, his number one rival. I think you touched on it, I think, in your mailbag. If he doesn't beat Washington this year, with Washington, let's say, admittedly so, but being down, right? I mean, they're not going to have the same team they had the last couple of years. If he doesn't get it, like, how important is that game for him for those who are still on the fence, maybe in the Ducks alumni base or fan base, who still maybe have doubts about him? Yeah, he needs that win.
He's 22-5. Okay, he's 22-5. So not really nice start. But you look at the 5 losses. Gets blown out by Georgia 49-3 in the very first game he coached. It was just a real eye-opening moment. You don't have the talent to be on this level, was the message. He loses to Washington. He loses to Oregon State. That's season 1. Season 2, obviously the 2 losses to Washington follow. He's got 5 losses. There they are. They're all big games. Now, he's gone on the road. He won and beat Utah at Rice-Eccles Stadium. He beat him bad there. That was a good win. He had a good win against Chip Kelly and UCLA. There have been some moments, okay? But you look at this season, and we're looking at Ohio State coming to Autzen Stadium and what will be the biggest game ever played there. You're going to Michigan. You're going to Wisconsin. And then, you got to play Washington at the end of the year. There are going to be some big opportunities for Lanning. Here's the big picture, though. This program has been funded, and University of Oregon's been funded with $1 billion from Phil Knight. He's 87 plus years old. He's saying, hey, getting to the Rose Bowl was the dream for me. This really isn't about a national championship. Nonsense. Oregon wants to get him a national title. Now it's up to Dan Lanning and his coaching staff to take, like, they've used the tools that Phil Knight has given them to recruit like nobody's ever recruited at Oregon. So they've got the talent, but can they develop it? We're about to find out. And can they, when they get into a game like Ohio State, where you've got Tosh Lupoi as D coordinator, he's a good recruiter, but maybe, we're not sure how good a coordinator he is. We got Tosh Lupoi matching wits with Chip Kelly and Ryan Day. We're going to find out, like, how much that coaching is going to matter. And, Dan Lanning told me, I said, who's coaching you? And he said he's leaning on a lot of people that, in his past, including Kirby Smart. He's been talking to him in the offseason. But Dan Lanning's got to get better as a coach. Tosh Lupoi, his D coordinator's got to get better. I like Will Stein, the offensive coordinator. I think he's real smart. But this coaching staff, I think there's an incredible amount of pressure, Puck, for this staff to take the talent that Phil Knight has enabled them to get with the resources he's poured into the program, take that talent and let it blossom. And if they don't, 10-2 is not going to be good enough. 9-3 is not going to be good enough. I think they need to get not only into the playoff because the bar's been lowered, but I think they need to be in a national semifinal, which would be a step forward to them, make the Final Four, and rattle around a little bit and see what the matchups look like. But if they don't get to that level, let's just say, they go 9-3. They lose a game here or a game there, they shouldn't, or they lose to Washington. I think there's going to be some heat for Dan Lanning.
I want to end on a good note. Not that was not a good note, but the Jaden Robinson story that you wrote about, and Jaden is a defensive back for Oregon State, and you wrote about him this week. I didn't know he was from up here. I don't remember him in high school, but he went to Auburn Riverside. He came up from California, and you just wrote a fabulous story about guy that they were in Oakland, correct? And just in the mom deciding we need you and us and your brothers, we need to get out of here. And they jumped on a bus and they headed up to Seattle and she saved them. And it's an amazing story about a mother who was just like, I'm going to do whatever I can for my 2 sons. And it's a fabulous work that they covered that story.
Yeah. as parents, I mean, as a dad, I look at that and I'm like, you would do anything for your kid. You know, you would do anything for your kids, Puck. You do. You go out and you sit there on a 100-degree day and, you know, you take them around to baseball games or whatnot. And you go, okay, I'm doing everything I possibly can to provide for my kids and support my kids. But you're talking about a single mom in Oakland who's got 2 sons under the age of 7. And Jaden is 6 years old. He is in school. He makes a bad decision, hops a fence, goes to a convenience store. He and a friend, you know, they wanted a bag of Cheetos. They stole it. She found out that night. That neighborhood where this elementary school was had, you know, drugs and guns and violent crime all over the place. And I'm sure this wasn't the first time that his mom had seen something like this. And she made the decision that night, we are leaving. She had $800. She had no job. They bought Greyhound bus tickets. I asked him, I said, did you know where you're going? I mean, he said he had no idea what Washington was. And they end up busing into Washington. His mother goes to a shelter there in downtown Seattle, and they live there for several months in a shelter. Now, I didn't put this in the story, but I think it's such an important part of his story. You know, while he's in the shelter, he encounters a friend that he makes who's a special needs kid, and he develops a friendship with this kid. And later, of course, they go on. His mother works 2 jobs. They get their feet underneath him. He's 8 years old now, and he's got a cell phone because he has to take care of his younger brother after school, so his mom's working. But, you know, Jaden Robinson grows up and becomes the Seattle Times Athlete of the Year his senior year. And now he's at Oregon State. He's got multiple degrees. He's working on a minor in Spanish. And, you know, he's going to be an important part of their team. And it's a really good story. There's more to it, but it's a really good story. His mom's the hero in this story. But I asked Jaden, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like after football, what do you want to do? And he says he wants to work with special needs kids. And then he starts telling me about that kid that he befriended in the shelter. And you talk about like just kind of the sliding doors nature of life. Like, you know, the fact that he comes in contact with somebody and understands like, oh, that kid has strengths and weaknesses just like I do. And that stuck with Jaden Robinson for whatever reason. Like he wants to go help other people, but big fist bump for his mom. I mean, such a important message, and what a great parent that is.
Go read it. JohnCanzano.com. Fabulous story on Oregon State defensive back Jaden Robinson. For those up here in the Seattle surrounding area, you remember him played his high school football there at Auburn Riverside. What else do we got cooking up there at JohnCanzano.com?
Well, you know, I think right now the Monday mailbag was interesting because people had me look at the Pac-12, like if Oregon State, Washington State do leave for another conference before the summer of 2026, before the end of the 26 fiscal year. I took a look at what kind of money in that $255 million settlement they'd have to give back. Turns out, you know, it's really just the NCAA tournament revenue and any money that's left in the bank. So it'll be really important for Oregon State, Washington State, if they are going to bolt to the ACC or the Big 12, to liquidate that bank account. Otherwise, they're splitting it 12 ways with the 10 departing schools. So keep an eye on that. But the NCAA tournament revenue, if they bail, reverts to the schools that earned it. So Arizona, UCLA, Oregon get some money back. They get millions back. And so, but the settlement money, I am told the vast majority of it, Oregon State, Washington State, keep it with them unless it happens to be sitting in that bank account when they dissolve the conference, but I don't expect that to happen. I think there'll be a penny in there if they have.
Okay, go read some more of those books that are behind you. I love the new backdrop. Yeah. It's wonderful.
I read most of these on this shelf right here. I read. They're my English. There's a lot of Hemingway.
Steinbeck.
On that shelf.
You quote Steinbeck a lot.
Yeah, I quote Steinbeck. I quote Hemingway. I like a little Ralph Waldo Emerson. I like Henry David Thoreau. Those were all influences. Like I didn't know a lot of that before I went to college, but I had a couple of really good professors that I happened to be paying attention in those classes. So I love those books. I love those guys that get outdoors and talk about people and adventure.
Well, 10 years, we'll see Canzano on a beach, sucking down liquor. What did Hemingway drink? What was he always drinking?
Was he drinking rum?
He had like a
I don't know.
He had like a signature drink with cats draped all over him.
Yeah, Mike Leach. I think Mike Leach probably could have told you what it was. But Leach kept inviting me out to Key West, and it's one of my big regrets that I didn't hang out with Leach in Key West and walk by Hemingway's place.
I did it. I went out there and saw his place. Yeah, it's You did? It's great. Great. Really cool.
Are those true? There's cats everywhere?
Cats everywhere. Everywhere. Wow. It's literally just cat. I mean, all over the place. All over the place.
How did that happen?
I don't know. It's no clue. And then they've got like where Leach would drink all the time called Captain Tony's. That was like his favorite bar. There's like all these stools have got famous people, their names on their stools. Like Leach had his own stool. Urban Meyer has his own stool. That's where like Urban Meyer and him became like really good friends down there.
So Hemingway liked that Papa Doble, that frozen daiquiri.
Oh, that's what it was?
Is that true? Yeah, that's what Hemingway most often associated with the frozen daiquiri.
I'm going to go have one right now. There it is. The John Canzano Show, brought to you by Zeke's Pizza, every Tuesday at 1 o'clock. You can please subscribe, follow along on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you find your podcasts. Of course, you can find John Canzano, johncanzano.com. Follow him on X at John Canzano BFT. Listen to his radio show, Bald Face Truth, down there in Portland, Oregon. And of course, his interviews and content up here every single week at pucksports.com. We'll talk to you next week. Thanks, Johnny.
Thanks, Puck.
Oh, good stuff. Sorry I went a little long.